No one's talking about this. People are all talking about lead and microplastics, but no one's talking about radioactivity, that's in our water. Oh my gosh. I'm old enough to remember when bottled water came out. I remember growing up drinking from the faucet, when we were traveling and we just stopped anywhere. And if you saw a faucet, you drank. It could have been the most rusty, like caked over faucet. And we didn't know to think about it. We just like, oh, I'm thirsty. Water is water. Let me drink this. But clearly that is not the world we live in now. So let's dive into water.
Water in the fertility side of my practice, I often refer to as infertility water because there are so many different things that are in our water sources when I'm thinking about tap water in particular that are impacting our overall health. We know that there are heavy metals that come in our water sources. A lot of this has to do with the way that water is purified, where metals are ultimately not removed in the purification process. But we also know that there's a lot of industrial chemicals as far as agricultural runoff that comes into tap water, essentially seeps into the ground, goes into the water, and it's just not being removed. But we also know that there's a lot of pharmaceutical drugs that are found in tap water. So things like antidepressants and NSAIDs. But in my space, we're really thinking about the fact that there's hormonal birth control in tap water, but there are also medications like Plan B in tap water where women are taking this, it gets excreted through the urinary tract and then put down the toilet, and purification isn't taking these things out of the water. And so we're consuming these things on a regular basis, which means that we might have these impacts to our overall health that are completely unintended just by drinking tap water.
Wow. So you could be drinking tap water and actually be getting the pharmaceutical that's trying to support you in aborting a child, basically.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. That's insanity.
And most people just don't realize this because we don't think about the fact of like how we excrete this as humans and then it goes into the water source. I think there's this misconception that when we're thinking about the way that water is purified by our local municipalities, that they're taking everything out of the water, but that's truly not the case when you look at what they actually do to the water.
Yeah, well, I was just reading about fluoride as well, which I'd known about it for a long time. This article is specifically focusing on when they go to add it, they say they're only adding so much, but it's really hard to control. So they're most likely adding too much. Even when we're adding things to the water, it's uncontrollable, let alone the things that are in there that we're not filtering out. So is the solution to not even use filtered tap water, or what does someone do?
Well, I think a lot of us do understand that we don't want to be drinking tap water maybe directly out of the tap. And so most of us have it going through some type of carbon filtration system, whether that's a pitcher that we're using and putting water into, like the old Brita filters that were really popular for a long time, or even it going through the filtration system in a refrigerator where we have it at the tap. Carbon filtration is going to be removing some things, but it might not be removing enough, especially depending on where you live in the country. So we know that if you go to the EWG and you look at your tap water score, you can see what's actually in your water. So that can be an incredibly helpful resource to determine what level of purification you need to do in your home. A lot of us do have things like chemicals and metals. When I looked at mine, there was huge levels. I think it was like 100 times the legal limit of chloroform in my tap water. A lot of us have a lot of radioactive substances depending where we live. A lot of research shows that at least 70% of the tap water in states like Texas are contaminated with things like radium and uranium due to drilling in those states. The same is true in places like
we're basically getting
Wisconsin.
radioactive, basically.
Exactly. And
Which,
so
of
if that's
course,
the
is
case,
not going to help fertility at all.
not at all. And then we're thinking about bone health and osteoporosis and all of these big, scary diseases like cancer that we're seeing on the rise as well. And a lot of this can come from tap water.
I love that we're highlighting these things, but the reality is most people won't even know how to read their local municipality's water. So have you found in your just your experience, like this filter works really well and I recommend this one, or maybe you recommend a few, but have you found something that really does work?
So we're looking for reverse osmosis for most people. So that's going to be things like AquaTrue or Greenfield. Those are the two main brands that we often recommend. They're great water filtration systems if reverse osmosis is enough. The key differentiator there is if you do live somewhere where there are radioactive substances, we know that drilling and fracking can basically release these radioactive substances. They come up to the surface in a lot of these states. So if you live in a state where that is an active practice, or even in the past, so thinking about states like California is one of them, a lot of those substances are in the water. And if that's the case, then the only way way to actually remove radioactive substances from tap water is through distillation. There's a company called My Pure Water that I use. We have a distillation system in our home where we distill about 5 gallons of water at a time. We put it in a glass container and then we bring it up until we drink it and then we refill it with the machine. But we're actually distilling water in our own home to make sure that we're removing that. I live in Colorado, and when I moved into the house that I'm currently in, we got a notification from the water company saying that there was high levels of radium in the water. So I was immediately like, we have to be distilling our water here.
Oh my gosh. There's so many questions coming up, but before I go backwards, when we reverse osmosis or distill, we're removing all the good stuff as well. What is someone who's being that conscientious, what do they do?
We need to be putting minerals back into the water when that's the case. When we are doing reverse osmosis or distillation, we're basically stripping it of all minerals and electrolytes. And if we're to drink those type of water, we're going to become dehydrated. We need minerals in order to be cellularly hydrated. So this is a really important factor. So even if we're using things like fulvic acid or trace minerals, there's a lot of different brands on the market. There's one called Trace Minerals, Utah Sea Minerals, Biofulvic is another brand I love. Cellcore has one that's okay as well. There's so many ways that we can be putting minerals back into our water, but then also thinking about a mineral dense diet as well, making sure that we're getting minerals somewhere, even if it's not directly in our water, is going to help offset the effects of those type of water purifications.
Okay, and we're definitely going to get to food. But now to step back a little bit, what would you say are like the kind of like top 5 toxins that if you see this and you see it at this number or higher, you have to filter this out?
So I would say if you see any level of uranium or radium indicated in your water, those are radioactive and we need to be addressing those. The same would be true of cesium as well. Cesium often gets kind of labeled as a heavy metal, but cesium is also used in a lot of radioactive explosions, for lack of better words. So a lot of people will have elevated cesium levels when they live in areas where they're being exposed to byproducts of World War II, for instance.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so like, in Europe or something, you're going to see that a lot. Wow. If you enjoyed the clip from the podcast, make sure to check out the next video up here or head over to watch the full episode down here. And before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Come on. Yeah, thanks for watching.